Now, not only does Obama's new Ebola czar not have any medical training, he's also a big fan of population control, which Klain called a top leadership issue that's challenging the world today in a recent interview.
I think the top leadership issue challenging our world today is how to deal with a continuing growing population in the world and all the resource demands it places on the world, and burgeoning populations in Africa and Asia that lack the resources to have a healthy, happy life. And I think we've got to find a way to make the world work for everyone.
If everybody's raising living standards to the point where everybody's got a car and everybody's got air conditioning and everybody's got a big house, well, the planet will boil over.
Have you ever heard of a thing called fluoridation? Fluoridation of water?
Yes, I have heard of that, Jack, yes. Yes.
Well, do you know what it is?
No. No, I don't know what it is now.
Do you realize that fluoridation is the most monstrously conceived and dangerous communist plot we have ever had to face?
Now at 8.
Oh my gosh! Oh my God! No! No!
The National Security Agency was illegally spying on everything Americans did for social control. Now, folks would call that a conspiracy theory then. It's now known fact. I want to give viewers and radio listeners a chance to write down some key terms and look this up. They kept the Manhattan Project secret. They kept the Tuskegee experiment secret. They've kept literally hundreds of different projects secret until the establishment feels like telling us they were doing it later. In the public documents dealing with weather manipulation, geoengineering, or terraforming, they say it's being done for our own good and to repair the atmosphere. But the scientists, meteorologists, astrophysicists, and others that I've talked to have said what they're spraying and releasing would actually eat holes in the atmosphere and damage the soils of the planet.
And now some scientists are saying that Ebola can go airborne, but it just hasn't in West Africa because it's too warm. Now, these are referring to 2 studies by U.S. Army scientists that show Ebola can spread by air in cold, dry weather, which is common to the U.S. A 1995 study entitled Lethal Experimental Infections of Rhesus Monkeys by Aerosolized Ebola Virus. It reported Ebola virus sensitivity to high temperatures and humidity, which is what you'll see in southern Sudan and northern Zaire, may have been a factor that's limiting aerosol transmission of Ebola virus in the African epidemics.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com. Now, a new article just came out saying that on Fox News, as many as a dozen CDC scientists exposed to Ebola. Now, it just popped up on my phone saying that a lab technician earlier this week at the CDC office in Atlanta had been exposed to Ebola and may have given it to another dozen scientists.
So here they're saying it is possible it could go airborne. It just needs colder temperatures, lower humidity, like we'll see in, I don't know, New York. But scientists working on weaponized Ebola. Where have we heard this before? Well, how about season 1 of The Walking Dead?
You know what this place is? We protected the public from very nasty stuff. Weaponized smallpox, Ebola strains that can wipe out half the country. Stuff you don't want getting out, ever.
It says as many as a dozen scientists may have been exposed to Ebola at a Centers for Disease Control laboratory in Atlanta earlier this week. Now, this is funny. We have Judge Jenkins out of Dallas. We have all these people saying that it's not easy to get it. There's no possible way. The CDC says that they are well equipped to handle Ebola, and yet we have this lab technician getting it and then possibly exposing 12 more people. That's 13 people this week so far that has been in contact. Now, who have those people been in contact with? What have they done? They're going to have to do another trace to find out where these people have been, who they've talked to. Is it bigger than only 13?
Shambling, mindless, flesh-eating monsters threatening to devour each other alive. But enough about Congress. No, I'm talking about the Pentagon's newly revealed plan for the zombie apocalypse. I repeat, the Pentagon has a zombie plan. While it's not a joke, it was for training purposes, but still. Zombie plan. 31 pages of it, to be exact, written in military speak, listing 8 different types of zombies to combat.
This is one of many of these tableaux that have come up comparing Luis Suarez to a zombie. But it's interesting that the zombie theme keeps coming up again and again in our culture. And I actually predicted this would happen. You get this comparison because, of course, the need to bite other people, to eat other people, that is basically one of the hallmarks of the zombie as we know it today. The zombie itself, can you all see that okay? Yeah, this is an image of a zombie. The concept of the zombie originates from Africa.
This is from the New York Times, and we haven't seen very much reporting about this. The White House said they were going to cut funding for risky biological studies. Now, this is them saying that they're not going to do any more weaponizing. What do you make of that?
Well, that's the smoking gun.
Mm-hmm.
That's Friday in the New York Times. You see, they de facto admitted that this is exactly what they were doing at those BSL-4 labs, in the 3 BSL-4 labs in West Africa.
The concept of the zombie originates from Africa.
As we've seen, they evidently didn't focus on containing the disease or even on basic contamination protocols.
Go into an infected Ebola patient's room without covering your head, with only wearing one pair of gloves and with your feet exposed. You would do that?
Absolutely. More is not always better. Better is better.
Well, today we got a picture of Dr. Frieden visiting an Ebola ward in Liberia. Look at him there. That's him front and center. He is covered head to toe.
Now, if the repeated lies and hypocrisy of the CDC doesn't make you wonder if the spread of the current Ebola outbreak has been deliberate, then the history of the U.S. government's involvement in bioweapons should. We're always told, of course, that DARPA's work on weaponizing viruses is strictly defensive. And it's for the public safety, of course. Just like the robots that they're creating that run faster than humans, I'm sure will only be used for hurricane relief. And it's not just DARPA. From the very beginning of its creation, the CIA has worked with criminals to develop biological and chemical weapons for the U.S. government. The book, A Terrible Mistake, The Murder of Frank Olson, tells the story of a CIA scientist who worked with biological and chemical weapons at Fort Detrick. His story is closely tied to Operation Paperclip, where Nazi war criminals were granted immunity for what they could bring to the American research programs on biological and chemical warfare.
You realize that in addition to fluoridating water, where there are studies underway to fluoridate salt, flour, fruit juices, soup, sugar, milk, ice cream, Mandrake, children's ice cream.
Good.
You know when fluoridation first began?
No, I don't yet.
1946. 1946, Mandrake. How does that coincide with your post-war commie conspiracy? It's incredibly obvious, isn't it? A foreign substance is introduced into our precious bodily fluids without the knowledge of the individual, certainly without any choice. That's the way a hardcore commie works.
Here's the news flash. They're doing the same thing here, just not with sterilants that are 100%. They're doing it with soft kills so that it's not as obvious, that mitigates what they hit you from 5 or 6 angles, with the fluoride that lowers fertility, with the estrogen mimickers that lowers fertility, and with all the other chemicals. The male sperm count, last time I checked, in the U.S. is down over 90%. Same thing in Europe. Just type in male sperm count down over 90%. You'll get mainstream BBC, AP, Reuters. What's going on? I mean, here's a Bloomberg headline. Alzheimer's test detects disease decades ahead of onset. Why don't we ask why the neurons are degenerating? Why don't we ask why neurological disorders, on average, in the West, get ready for this, and the numbers vary, are up between 3,000 and 10,000%. You heard me right. Look it up yourself. Why is diabetes up 3,000% in Hispanics? Up almost 1,000% in Caucasians, 2,000% in blacks. Why? Why is cancer of every type off the chart. New cancers everywhere. Pediatric cancer up on average over 10,000%, Journal of Pediatrics. And by the way, if you're a radio listener, you can write down what I say.
I'm going to try and backtrack that, what you just said, because
sometimes,
yeah, well, sometimes, hey, I might reach 96 like Jacques Fresco one day and need this, you know, to remember who I am.
I don't think it'll take that long, you know. I think we're coming up to the crux shortly.
Mm-hmm. Of what?
Not that we're going to be ready. Not that we're ready at all. I'm not ready, I don't think.
Well, before you say coming up to the crux, let's backtrack a minute, because as you just said, and I'm going to paraphrase it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the job is really to take care of each other, okay?
No,
take
not
care
of each other.
Take care of the future, take care of the children.
Not even that.
All right, go on. You rephrase it.
Start with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Most philosophers have said that the main thing is to understand yourself in this life. And a part of that is what philosophers ask in terms of what is the good life.
Yeah.
What's even good? And it is culturally defined to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all humanity. And I think at the back of humanity is a true God.
Yeah.
Who's gonna bring us all together. But we work on ourselves because we can't do it for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna read a book, we read it for ourselves. We can't read a book for our children necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can't understand things for our children. Because it'd be a shame for the children if they didn't understand for themselves, and it's the same with everyone. Everyone's got to understand this thing for themselves.
Well, the way they learn is the way they grow. And the way they grow is the way they learn.
And you can even encourage certain moves in the direction that you feel is the best for your dependents.
As you just said, we're never too old to learn. Jacques Fresco's 96, and as I said, I believe, because he's on my friends list, and I'm sure he does check on what people are saying and mentioning with regards to what he's saying, and it seems like he's come with a good response. I don't know if it's a direct response to what I said, or if we were all just tapping into the same cultural vein. Inevitably, all these non-original ideas must come to one conclusion, inevitably, because we are in a finite world and everything's finite. Everything has been designed for us, and as I said previously, you said that we're here to do God's work, and look after each other and all of that.
Oh, you said to look after each other. Ultimately, if we all do what's good.
Well, I'm paraphrasing what you said.
We do, but to say we can look after each other, that's such a tricky thing. By looking after ourselves.
Well, there comes a fine line between helping somebody because they want the help and intruding into someone's personal space.
So what we do for ourselves with selfish motives.
Right, and
we might want things to go better for someone else, but that's because we care about that someone.
So when do you draw the line for a duty of care, for example? Because a duty of care should be, taking into consideration, I suppose, everybody. But, we're not trying to put one side or pit one side against the other. You know what I mean? We're trying to ensure that everybody equally is there with us in this human race. We're all here, and the things we need to be motivated for is food, clothes, and shelter. Wait, let me finish on this train of thought. The main contributors to the continuation of life and all life in the future and all life that's ever been, they've needed food, and in food is food and water, right? Clothes, protection from the elements, and shelter, which is also protection from the elements.
Yeah, but how were we made in the beginning? We had abundance of food, and as for shelter and clothing,
having an abundance of food doesn't mean that it was in any way organised. When you're just dealing with one family, hypothetically speaking, the Bible was talking about man being born into a paradise. This male and female representing all men and women, which that in itself is a controversy, because There's people that believe, well, there was a whole bunch of men and women. They're just talking about the species of man and the Nephilims and all of that.
Which of our foodstuffs, though, grow or are created by us purely for our benefit? Things grow for themselves. Vegetables grow for their own motives. Animals grow for their
you see that
own
same
motives.
Jack Fresco? He mentions that again. A very interesting topic. What he says is plants. Yeah, he did an experiment. Well, his children basically. He was telling his children, and he's saying plants don't just grow just because of sunlight, and they don't just grow just because of water, and they don't just grow just because of, you know, one particular thing. It's a combination of all these things that are required for life. Everything is required. Everything that is in this habitation, this greenhouse that we're all in, this big garden, yeah, that we're all in. Everything that's in it, we contribute to, and it contributes to us. It's a symbiosis. Yeah.
Are you saying diseases are necessary? Even
disease is all right. Give an example. You know, when a dead thing rots, yeah, it goes back into the earth. Is that necessary? Would you say?
Well, that is.
Why?
Because you wouldn't want dead things mounting up, stinking up the place.
Well, if it didn't rot, if bacteria wasn't there, it wouldn't rot. It wouldn't stink. It would just be there, lifeless.
God's decided that.
Right. That is one of the rules.
It's a good thing as well.
That's one of the rules.
Living and dying continues in that same vein as it has done.
Matter and energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed into another form. Right? Whatever it is in life that holds the molecules, atoms, elements together in a life-sustaining way ceases to be. Right? And all of those things return to the original materials from which they came from. That is not life. The dust that we see on the ground, the rocks and the dead things, the minerals and the elements that are devoid of life, that are a part of this planet, are not life in themselves. So to say that, like evolution, we came from a dead thing, we came from a rock, the rain fell on the rocks turned into a soup, and then that came alive by itself with no other contributing factors, is as hard to believe as any other fairy tale.
Why is it hard to believe?
Because it requires faith. It requires a belief in that.
But
that is another religion.
Hard to believe. Everything is.
I'm not saying anything else is greater or easier to believe.
Hard to know, but easy to believe.
Oh well, okay. If you're going to say it like that,
it's certainly not hard to believe. People believe all sorts of things.
Yes, that's true.
That the Earth is flat, floating on the back of a
turtle.
You know what I mean?
On top of some elephants.
So people will believe anything, but we're after the knowledge of things.
Yeah, well, Jacques Fresco, you know, he's still sharpening his pencil, and we should all keep our pencils ready to write with and to make notes and all the rest of it.
Dig out our ears with.
Dig out our ears, yes. Because you know, people are looking for answers, and we need to be able to give people answers. It's
answers.
We got working together. I think is the answer. Working together.
How can we give other people answers? Working for the answers for ourselves, but it's a very selfish thing still.
Well, if you think like that, that's fine. But I'm saying, from my perspective, you know, it's like I'm a musician, and I like to give something back in terms of my music and all of that. That's what we do with our art. However, there's not a lot of opportunities these days, you know, and I'm struggling to see why it's like that, because in my experience, and still, you know, nothing new under the sun, the creative industries is the biggest industry anywhere in the world. It's bigger than all the other industries put together because it includes all the other industries, your electricians, your plumbers, your carpenters and whatnot. You know what I mean? So it creates the event, and creating the event creates the opportunity. And governments and councils should be getting behind artists and musicians, people like that. I think one of the reasons they're not is because they know that the same artists and musicians, being culturally aware, are on the, shall we say, the cutting edge of thinking. You know, they're taking the modernities and, as Jacques Fresco says, arranging what exists in different ways. So it's like a puzzle now. You see what is, you see the resources, you see the way it's managed currently, and then just like Salvador Dali, you juxtapose some long legs from a giraffe onto an elephant, both of which still exist in reality. You know, it's not really original thinking, but it is for those that have never thought about that before. And that's the power of art. That's what art does. That's what good art does. It takes everyday things that people don't necessarily pay attention to or are, you know, not appreciative of. Oh yeah. There's one on there about CDC, Alex Jones, The Walking Dead. Going back to the second season, or is it the first season, when it got to the CDC and they're saying about Ebola.
Yeah.
Put it on, in fact. Put it on, the Ebola thing. You see what I'm saying, man? It's powerful. Alex Jones, Ebola, Walking Dead.
This predicted.
Mm-hmm.
As the last of the reported Ebola cases here in the U.S. are being given the all clear, we're getting reports of Ebola cases on the rise in Western Sierra Leone. They're reporting more than 20 deaths a day.
Leon McAdoo.
In lieu of a travel ban,
McAdoo.
restrictions coming from Ebola-stricken countries restricted to just 5 U.S.
As I saw on the TV, what is that DVD the other day, was in the Bone Kickers.
Hold on, listen to what she's saying first. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Chicago, Newark, Washington, and Atlanta. They'll have enhanced screening procedures, which include
Don't let the pretty smile.
inquiring about travel history and looking for symptoms of the disease, which that doesn't seem very enhanced to me. And of course, there is no word yet on any monitoring that they're going to be doing for these travelers once they leave the airport. Now, not only does Obama's new Ebola czar not have any medical training, he's also
No, I find that odd. I find that odd. These people that are created as emperors have no qualifications for the job. They're not medical in any way. But he's going to advise everybody else. Oh, there he is. He's a spin doctor trying to make people not panic.
Or to make people panic.
Right, but turn it up a bit, in fact.
The resources to have a healthy, happy life. And I think we've got to find a way to make the world work for everyone.
Air travel are going to see travelers coming from Ebola-stricken countries restricted to just 5 U.S. airports. This will start Wednesday. Travelers who are coming from any of these Ebola-affected regions will have to land in New York, Chicago, Newark, Washington, and Atlanta. They'll have enhanced screening procedures, which include taking temperatures, inquiring about travel history, and looking for symptoms of the disease, which that doesn't seem very enhanced to me. And of course, there is no word yet on any monitoring that they're going to be doing for these travelers once they leave the airport. Now, not only does Obama's new Ebola czar not have any medical training, he's also a big fan of population control, which Klain called a top leadership issue.
It's the same club, isn't it?
Today in a recent interview.
I think the top leadership issue challenging our world today is how to deal with a continuing growing population in the world and all the resources.
Wait, pause that.
That lack the.
Right. The question he's been asked is about how do we stop Ebola? His answer involves population. Right? I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert of anything. I'm not a doctor, not medically trained.
Maybe there's too many people in it.
Right? I'm now the Ebola czar. Yeah? Whatever that is. whatever that is. Like, we can't call ourselves king or queen in this country. We get around it. Call him a czar.
So he's King Ebola.
He's King Ebola. Yeah.
Fuck off, Ebola. No one wants you.
Emperor of Ebola. Okay, anyway, titles aside, why you need a title, you know, why you wouldn't just put your best doctor in the world on, you know, the most, what is it, most virulent disease going that they have no cure for, but they're going to put some guy from down the pub,
some layman,
I'll tell you what we should, you know what I mean? Someone who can get across to them people in the pub who just want to down a few pints and don't think too deep, because deep thoughts hurt the brain, yeah? Having not trained, like if they're muscles that you can see on your physical outside of your body, you pump your arms, right? You get big arms. Well, imagine that's your brain, but you don't pump your muscles in your brain, so it just withers away. 97-pound weaklings in their heads. So he likes to give the kind of information that'll appeal to the 97-pound weakling.
Well, let's see what information is.
Right, go.
Resources to have a healthy, happy life, and I think we've got to find a way to make the world work for everyone.
If everybody's raising living standards to the point where everybody's got a car and everybody's got air conditioning and everybody's got a big house, well, the planet will boil over.
So of course that's
so you can't have it
to the fire, as a lot of West Africans are putting a lot of mistrust in the government being there in the first place.
Did you think you was going to get a nice house and car, Africa?
Are saying that Ebola
everyone can have a nice house and car.
How are we but it just hasn't in West Africa.
We have to have a dying poor,
you
know, in some country.
By U.S. Army scientists that show Ebola can spread by air in cold, dry weather, which is common to the U.S. A 1995 study entitled Lethal Experimental Infections of Rhesus Monkeys by Aerosolized Ebola Virus. It reported Ebola virus sensitivity to high temperatures and humidity, which is what you'll see in southern Sudan and northern
So how does it spread over there then?
Aerosol transmission
if it dies,
Ebola virus
because you know how hot and dry it is, and our viruses,
elevated temperature and relative humidity have been shown to reduce aerosol stability of these viruses.
Pause it.
Now the study also referred to the 1989 Ebola.
Right. So you know Africa. Right, we've been Africa. It's hot and dry. You need to drink every couple of steps. You go out.
That's a bit extreme, isn't it? We saw Ethiopia. That's not representative.
Well, you see in other parts of but that's as horn of the Africa as you can get. They're talking.
Yeah, but Ebola's in West.
The same.
Ethiopia's in the east, and it's mountainous rather than on the plains. A lot of Africa's characterised by a lot of different environments, from hot to cold.
Yeah, but on that equatorial line,
we saw a place similar to Europe in climate, pretty much.
From time to time.
Yeah, it's hot days, and it's really hot.
But I'm just saying, right? You know, in your head, it's hot, right? It's hot. This virus, like all viruses, needs to be inside some kind of host, some kind of liquid, some kind of thing to keep it moist. If it dries out, it's dead. Okay, so that's why they just said. If it comes to places that are cold and relatively humid, like the northern climates, then there's a potential, they said, and this is only what they're saying, for it to be airborne, which
primate quarantine facility in Western Virginia, and this is where the virus rapidly spread.
We can assume that they would design something based on Ebola to be transmitted through the air, through any means necessary.
Right, well, play it again anyway, because this is where we'll get back to the Walking Dead.
Interesting to note that that study took place in December of 1989, where it's likely that temperatures in Reston were below freezing. And this study is also similar to another one that was done in 2012, which exposed monkeys to an airborne filovirus, which is also similar to Ebola.
And why would you do that?
While no strong evidence of secondary
Did you ever get up in the morning and just want to do something like that?
They say it is possible in lower temperatures, which are not a factor in these warmer climates. So the study also points out that they have stability in aerosol form, which is comparable to influenza. And the Pentagon obviously took this threat of airborne filoviruses so seriously that it organized a medical countermeasures workshop with the Department of Health and Human Services in 2013.
That's quite recent, isn't it?
It could go airborne.
2013.
It just needs
That's
colder
just last year.
temperatures, lower humidity, like we'll see in, I don't know, New York. But scientists working on weaponized
A lot of places
Ebola.
like New York.
Where have we heard this before? Well, how about season 1 of The Walking Dead?
Season 1, you see.
What this place is? We protected the public from very nasty stuff. Weaponized smallpox, Ebola strains that can wipe out half the country. Stuff you don't want getting out ever.
So obviously that's a little bit of fun there. Thanks to one of our fans on Twitter that pointed us to that little bit of predictive programming.
Well, that
but
must have been me,
let's be honest, we all know that the creators of The Walking Dead are just conspiracy theorists. Now, investigative journalist and former NSA contractor Wayne Madsen told Press TV on Monday that the militarized response to this Ebola crisis in West Africa was a little bit suspicious. And the latest Ebola outbreak may also be a resurfacing of an earlier infection that's linked to the CIA. Madsen said that we see here the U.S. was violating a Senate law forbidding the U.S.
If they want to hear the full thing, they can go on his channel. The main thing that I'm getting at, nice one. The main thing that I'm getting at is, right, culture. Going back to what Jacques Fresco was saying, culture. People only can't think in terms of original thought. They can only think in terms of what they've already seen and the frameworks and the constructs that are already in existence and added to later by others. Yeah, and so by that we see a mimicking. You know, human beings are just great mimickers. This is where the tribal attitude comes from. If you grew up with the head shrinkers, then you're a head shrinker. If you grew up with now you're into following football, then you know your sons will follow football and so on and so on. That becomes your tribalism. That becomes the way you identify with self. Because first of all, it seems that everyone's trying to find an identity. Identity, it seems to be the topic at the moment. I saw an artist the other day on Channel 4 talking about his artwork, and he'd basically duplicated a man and then put like a penis and then put other symbols to represent, you know, what it means to be a man. But then he's duplicated it, meaning to say that all men in this society, at least on this level, identify with themselves in this way, and hence that is their tribe. Well, they're probably not culturally aware or taking themselves out of the moment, out of their lifestyle for a minute to say, well, who's programmed all of this to be like this? Who says that has to be the norm? You know, because this is one of the problems we've got with problem think versus solution think. A lot of people want to get to solution think and are stuck with the rest of the people that are in problem think. You know, oh, if you do that, that'll create a problem. Why? Because you have to do this. Well, wait a minute. We created a system of dealing with things. But once that system now is controlling us instead of us controlling the system, that is the same as a machine that's running haywire, you know, producing too much or producing too little. And the effect really is the same effect on us, which is a negative effect. And we don't want negative effects. What we want is a positive effect. Going back to what you were saying earlier, you know, where humanity can take care of itself, all of us, whether it needs others taking care of. Well, that's what we need to get to, isn't it?
Humanity,
how?
Humanity can't take care of itself. Humanity needs its God.
Well, as we've already said, a plant cannot grow without all of the elements, the sunlight, the water, the soil, everything that it needs to grow has to be there, or it just won't grow. It's the same with us. Everything just has to be there. It's not a choice. It's not like, well, shall I choose to have a house or eat this week? Which is what some people seem to think is going on. Based on what model? Based on a model of greed, based on a model of having, and even acquiring, even when you have too much. Or taking the opposite of that, which is having so little to the point where you can't live anymore in the society, in the world, you know? being shunned by what are supposed to be fellow brothers and sisters. Yeah, the world needs a wake-up call, but we should not have to have piles of victims, you know, for a system gone wrong. What we should be doing is everybody getting together and discussing the solutions, because we know what the problems are. What are the solutions to those problems? For example, what is the solution to poverty right now? Work, innit?
Is it?
Well, having some way of earning or trading. Having a trade then.
Is it?
Well, you tell me. Right now, in the world we're in right now, not in a world of the future, we're not quite there yet. Right now, how do you supplement?
Some people say that under certain conditions, certain economic conditions, that work is basically oppressive, rather than in any way meaningful or self-expressive.
Is that because of a lack of choice?
Partly.
Is it also because of a lack of enjoyment, enthusiasm, passion for a given trade? Does that trade even exist? Have we got to the point where everything's so homogenized? An example, someone who works in, say, a supermarket, and they're doing 20 different tasks. Sometimes they cash up, sometimes they're helping stuff into the bag, sometimes they're unpacking stuff, sometimes they're doing accounts, sometimes they're doing stock taking. You know, that kind of homogenized work where you're kind of like a dog's body, some would say. But I think that's a derogatory term. You know, I hope someone out there comes up with a better term, because I'm not trying to put people down, you know, but that's how people probably feel about it. They feel they're a dog's body, but, you know, really they're an assistant, aren't they? They're a shop assistant. They assist in the running of that shop. But the word assistant is now made to seem derogatory. Like the sorcerer's apprentice. You know, you got the sorcerer and then you've got the apprentice. Well, the apprentice doesn't like being called the apprentice. He wants to be the main guy. But do people know what it takes to be the main guy?
Man alive. When I was 11, my mother was murdered.
You know what it takes to be the main guy? Hard work.
Does it?
Yeah, you got to do the way. You got to lead the way.
Some people born to greatness, some people achieve greatness, some people have greatness forced upon them.
You were in a coma. For how long?
Sometimes you just have to be the right person in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, but that's everyone's superhero quest. Everyone's got their own hero quest in their life to achieve, or to find out what is their purpose to you know, being here. Yeah, we're all here to help each other, you know. And the myths, the power of the myth, the power of the superheroes is to make people realise, you know, the greater good in the world and try to do their best good for others.